I'm now live. Okay, so you know the drill. As I'm waiting for people to join, I'm gonna check it out. I'm gonna do some double-fisted drinking here today. A little coffee. Just made it. It's really hot. Little water. Hi, everybody. One of these days, we're gonna have to get like an intern or assistant or somebody to go and just spend the time on my YouTube channel, just taking off all the. It must be at this point like 24 hours of just me sipping. So, hi everybody. Hi. Welcome to Geek Speaks Greek. I am your geek, George O'Connor, speaking English, but the Greek I'm speaking about is the fact that this is a thrice weekly series of lectures about different people and places and things from Greek mythology, be they goddess, god, hero, or monster. We're in the middle, well, there's really no middle because Greek Epic Hero Week on Geek Speaks Greek is inexplicably 4 episodes long, so we're just cresting over the middle. Today we're doing probably the most famous, in fact, I'm not even going to say probably, definitely the most famous of all Greek heroes. Well, except for Heracles. That's a tricky one. Of all Greek epic heroes, Odysseus. We're going to talk, there's so much stuff to talk about him. Like, my notes for this one, I actually did notes today, are like crazy long. I'm still going to have to skim over stuff. I'm going to actually posit that he has probably had more written about him than almost any other character from Western literature. It's crazy the amount of stuff that there's out there about Odysseus. And we'll talk about that. So if you are just joining us for the first time, you should know that I always start off any episode of Geek Speaks Greek sharing some of the wonderful fan art that you, my fans, have sent me. And it's no exception today. There's just a ton of stuff, more than I could probably show at once, but I will try. So first up, this is from, oh, come on, don't be slow on me now. That one's not loading. So we're not going to see that one right now, unfortunately. Let's try it one more time. Okay. That took a while. First up is Eleanor's drawing of Diomedes. Diomedes was the star of Monday's episode. He's kind of like, he kind of carries the narrative weight for part of the Iliad. You know, Achilles spends his time sulking, and Diomedes like, you know what, I'll take over, I'll fight the Olympians, I'll wound 2 gods in one day, I'll have a great day of it. Turns out he's very popular. Seems like a lot of you have a special spot in your heart for him, and I do too. Like, he's a pretty cool character. So let's see what else we have here. Here is another drawing. Check out this beautiful Diomedes. Look at the way this is from Jamie, by the way. Look at the way she handled the eye glow. I really like that. I actually went for a very stylized eye glow where I actually drew radiating lines in my book. And actually, upon reflecting it, like, so I was doing something, I was going through a stylistic thing, like the shines off his armor were very, like, drawn tangibly. I'm like, kind of like now, not sure if I would have drawn it that way. But this is beautiful. Like, you definitely get the sense, like he's got that godly vision. And we can see his sword and his shield are also likewise enchanted because Athena pumps him up. We're going to be talking a lot about Athena pumping people up today. Athena, as you know, I often refer to her as the sponsor of heroes. And while she definitely in the Iliad favors Diomedes, she is the right-hand person of Odysseus throughout the entire Odyssey. There's just no way the Odyssey would have happened without Athena and, to a lesser extent, Hermes helping him out like every single step of the way. Let's see what else we got here. So there's a lot of cool stuff from Yehi, who writes to us from Korea. You know, she's like the most fabulously talented cartoonist and illustrator. She actually does her own version, a comic style. It's mostly wordless. I think it's all wordless, actually. She's showing the moment when Diomedes, being guided by Athena, there's Ares charging. His eyes see him for what he is because she gifts him with that eyesight. And the moment where she actually, I want to show you this part because it's cool. As Ares gets closer, she guides his spear, holds it for him, and stabs Ares. This was one of my favorite things to draw myself when I did this story, so I could see why, he decided to do that. We talked about the ignoble end of Theseus, how he gets kicked off a cliff. Here's his death. And he's saying, to too bad it's not the sea under the cliff, because he's about to, like, I just like how calm he is about his fate, and he's yelling, this is Skryos, or Skryos, probably. Now, if this is casting back a few days, if you remember on Friday when we covered Achilles, I talked about the story, and I want to bring, this is really great, I'm really glad, he drew this one, because I'm going to be talking about the story a little bit today, where there's kind of like I don't really like it, it's a bit sexist story, where, like, so in order to save him from his death, his prophesized death in the Trojan War, Achilles' mom sent him away to another king's court and had him live as a woman. He was in disguise as a female. And Odysseus comes, wily Odysseus, crafty Odysseus, very smart. He gets this idea, he's like, oh, I'm going to put out a bunch of gifts, and I'm going to put out like some clothes and like some jewelry and some makeup, and I'm going to put out a spear. And when Achilles grabs the spear, he's like, aha, you're a boy, as if, like, you know, Athena doesn't have spears and stuff. So here's the moment. There is Achilles as a woman, long hair, wearing a dress, nice earrings too. And he's saying, ah, what a day to brush my hair, try a new dress, get a good spear and some jewelry. And Odysseus is there like, this surpasses my wisdom. Like, I don't understand how someone can like quote unquote girly things and like quote unquote boy things. Man, you know what? It's like 5,000 years ago. The dude's got a lot of growing up to do. And then finally, this is kind of like a really sultry picture. Look at this. It's like a little moment between like Aphrodite and Dionysus. And he's like, you have really crazy hair. And she's like, you too. And like, I think there's something going on there. Is that a relationship that we could ship together? Do we like that? I should say there are some versions where they have a kid together. It's not unheard of. He's not one of her normal paramours. He's not counted in that level normally, but I like it. And they do have crazy hair. So, I mean, it's weird when you think how much older she is than him, that she's definitely seen him as a baby, but she's also definitely been with Hermes, and like, she definitely saw him as a baby. We even see that in the book, so I don't know. I guess it's different when you're immortal. You probably see a lot of people as babies. So let's see. This is from Nora and Drake. They sent in a bunch of stuff today. So here is Nora's version of Diomedes wounding Aphrodite. Cool detail there. Look at the drop of ichor coming out. That's really nice. And that's her, I guess that's her carrying away Aeneas, like swooping down. She's like, oh, like that's a very, I got a few pieces of art of that. People really like that bit of the story. Then, super neat, she did a bunch of drawings of the gods dressed as if they were around today, like in normal clothes. Look at Poseidon with his, like, he's got like flood pants on. It's like, just in case the flood comes in. Looks like Hades definitely being kind of, is that Hades or is that Persephone? I think it's Hades. Hades being kind of goth. Ares, I like that he's still like, look, I know it's modern day, but I'm still wearing a battle helmet. I don't care. I'm here. Wait, or that could be Athena. No, it's definitely Ares because he's angry looking. These are all super fun. Here's some more. Athena's doing the same thing. She's also like, not only am I still wearing my helmet, I'm carrying my shield, and my Aegis has, like, which is actually a coat, has snakes coming off it. Hera, I'm going to say, kind of looks the same, but that makes sense. Her outfits, I mean, she's wearing some billowing dresses, like they're certainly eye-catching, but they would definitely work. These are super fun. I like all of these. I was having some real fun time looking at them. And then her brother Drake drew a picture of the Cyclopes in their forge with Hermes coming to visit, which makes sense. That would make a lot of sense he would come down too, right? So, I mean, and like, again, Drake, great job. Like, you spent so much time drawing on all the different details and the colors. I am so impressed with people who just draw over the entire page like that. Like, they cover every inch of it. And you're doing it with crayons. You have to, like, really draw that in. So, way to go, Nora and Drake. You two guys are some of my faves. I love seeing this. I just realized, I showed your old version. I was trying not to, I'm sorry. But, yeah, he sent a corrected version. Maybe I'll show that next episode. Now, this is interesting. This is from Addie. Addie sent in an idea for what the cover for my Last Olympians book would look like. And it says, Hestia and Dionysus, from the first to the last. Which we're actually just called, actually, we don't have the full title worked out. It's called Dionysus the something. I haven't figured that out yet. I will say, surprisingly, Addie, you're not that far off from the cover. I've drawn the cover already. The cover's all colored. We're waiting to premiere it with someone. You're kind of close. There's a little bit more going on in my cover, like in the background, but the poses of the characters pretty similar. So I think Addie has my password and has gotten into my computer. So we need to figure that one out. Once again, now if you remember a few weeks back, I did an episode dedicated to my Lego Olympians, the most awesome gift I've ever received. We have a new entrant? What happened? New entrant into the Lego Olympians. This is the first pass at them. There's some different, very creative takes on them. And I'd like to go through them all one by one. It's Ares with the helmet. Hermes, he's dressed like a crook, which makes sense because he's the thief. There's Zeus with the beard. I'm not sure the one with the keyboard on his head is. I want to say that must be Hephaestus. It is. I guessed it. And then, check it out. They're building their own Lego Olympus. With, like, the bricks and everything. Really cool. I remember being obsessed with trying to make that when I was a kid. Oh, that was, by the way, that was from Moira. And Moira has, like, the super-duper talented parents who also draw really well. Isaac and Jeremiah. It's like the talent family. And, let's see. This is... Oh, I forgot who sent this, who drew this one. Their mom just mentioned they were going to get in trouble for sending it in so late. But here we have another Diomedes stabbing Aphrodite as she carries away Aeneas. And then we have Apollo showing up being like, oh, no, you don't. Like, this is the moment right before that much contested bit where, like, is he really humility? No, he's actually literally trying to stab Apollo, too. Apollo's not having him. So, like, that's another great drawing. You know what? I want to say, is that... Man, I'm trying to remember your mom. Like, your mom's name is Alicia. I think your name is Megan. I don't know. I forgot. I'm sorry. And then, speaking of Megan, here's a few pieces from Megan, who often draws him with stuff. This one is pretty hilarious. I don't think I've shown this before. This is, as you know, she ships together Hermes and Athena. And Hermes is presenting his brand new pet turtle, his new tortoise, George. It's Elias. Elia drew that last picture. Thank you. And Athena's going, huh, Hermes? What's this? And he's like, oh, this is my pet turtle. I named him George. He's adorable, isn't he? Which is really cute, and I'm very touched that you named a turtle George, except for we remember, like, literally the first thing Hermes ever did was kill a turtle. So, and turn into his lyre. So I guess Hermes is going to kill me. I mean, there's worse ways to go, right? Now, this is a really funny piece. And unfortunately, I have my poster off camera where nobody could see it. But if you've ever seen my Olympians family poster, where they're all assembled and everyone's there, you can see that Eris, the goddess of cause and trouble, has taken a little bit of Hestia, who of course is on fire all the time, and she's about to light Dionysus's butt on fire. And this is Megan's drawing of the second after that photo. It's like they took the photo for my poster, and then he jumps up, he's saying, my butt. And it's just chaos. And she's laughing, and all the gods are looking on. Super ambitious. Remember I was saying about somebody who uses every inch of the paper? She crammed in every single god. Well, no, I guess the fates aren't in there. But, they don't need to be. They wouldn't react. They'd be like, yeah, we knew that was going to happen with the fates. And let's do one more drawing. This is a drawing of Athena and her quasi-son Erichthonius. Erichthonius doesn't appear in Olympians anywhere because I'm not really... He's one of those myths I'm kind of like, I don't really buy with that one. It's kind of hard to explain him, especially in keeping it family-friendly, but in a weird way, he's kind of a son of Athena and Hephaestus, but they never were together. It's very odd. It's a really weird story. And then he's this kind of weird snake, half founder of Athens. Actually, I might make him appear. I'm not sure. He might have been somewhere, but I'm not going to ever tell that story because it's a weird story, but you guys could look it up. It's a cool story. So that was a lot of artwork. If you have anything you want to send to me, please send it to my email at georgeoconnorbooks@gmail.com. And as always, if there's another episode that you want to rewatch again or you catch up on stuff, these things are always archived on my youtube.com/user/George Olympians. And I guess, I don't know, something happened all of a sudden that's different in Instagram. So now they're just showing them there forever too. So you have multiple places to watch these. And people are, and they're writing, and it's great. I'm going to apologize now for sweating so much. I had to turn off the ACs because it's loud and I'll close the window. So I'm going to be a sweaty mess. And that's okay, because now we're getting into Odysseus. Couple interesting things about Odysseus right off the bat. Remember how I said he's maybe the most famous Greek hero except for Heracles? They're also really the only two Greek heroes I could think of who have both a Greek, Odysseus, Heracles, and a Roman name, Hercules, Ulysses. It's just kind of interesting, and I think it's because they were so well known, so renowned. Although, actually, the Romans weren't really a super big fan of Odysseus. They kind of saw a dark side to him, and we're going to see that dark side coming out as we talk about this. So Odysseus, where to start? He was the king of Ithaca, which is a kingdom that we actually are not really sure which. It was an island in Greece, right? We're not actually really sure nowadays where Ithaca was. There's certain other islands which are no longer called Ithaca, which are like, maybe this is Ithaca, we're not sure. So Ithaca was this kind of like, we're pretty sure it was a real place, but at some point over the millennia, it changed names. So he was the king of Ithaca. And when he comes to, I've been mentioning like the different people in the Trojan War. Ithaca's a smaller nation, so whereas like Achilles brought like 50 ships and Diomedes brought like 80, if I'm recalling, I think he brings 12. But he might have had 12 ships only at the end of the war, because he might have lost some people, I don't know. He is the son of Laertes, but most interesting, and I think we'll all be interested in this part, he's actually the great-grandson of Hermes, which makes a lot of sense when you look at his character, which makes him the great-great-grandson of Zeus, right? But, so Odysseus, especially in the Odyssey itself, we were reminded over and over again of how strong and tall and powerful he is and how much he looks like a god. But the one thing we're reminded of all the time, even in the Iliad too, is how wily he is. Wily is kind of a funny word. We don't really use it as much anymore, but it kind of means like sneaky. He's very, very smart. I would say unequivocally he is the smartest of the Greeks involved in the Trojan War. But like his great-grandfather, he's a little bit sneaky about it. And more so than Hermes, I think Hermes more has his heart in the right place. Sometimes Odysseus might be a little bit of a scoundrel. A rapscallion, any other old rascal, any of these old words I can come up with. Getting ahead of myself there. So we don't really know much about his early life, except for like a little bit of that lineage, right? But there is an interesting story about how he was recruited. I mentioned this before, that whole idea that he was the one who actually recruited. So basically, Menelaus, his wife, Helen is abducted by Paris because of Aphrodite. It's so hard to get into this thing quickly. And that starts the Trojan War. And Menelaus goes to his brother Agamemnon, who's like the high king of the Greeks. He's like, we need to go to war with Troy, and we need to enlist all these different Greek kings to help us so I can get my wife back. And Agamemnon's like, okay. And most people are kind of like, dude, I don't want to go fight for this stupid thing. This is dumb. And like with Achilles, like he was tricked by Odysseus with that weird story I just told before about like hey, would you like some perfume or do you like an instrument of death? And some of that worked. Odysseus himself was tricked. He gets wind of this. They're coming to Ithaca and he's like, I just literally had my son, Telemachus. We're talking about Telemachus a lot. My wife, Penelope, she's like so gorgeous and I love her so much. There's a lot of happy pig farmers on my island. I'm living my life. I don't want to like go off and fight because this guy's wife ran off with another dude. Maybe she wasn't happy. Do you ever think of that? So because he's so wily, he pretends to be crazy. And the way he pretends to be crazy, first off, he's like, oh, no, kind of acting a little bit over the top. But people weren't really sensitive about mental health issues back then. He hooks like a donkey, and so he's plowing his fields out in front, which is also weird for a king to do, I guess. Like, don't you have farmers for that? So he's plowing a field in front of his house, and he's like there's a plow, right? And like normally you put like either 2 oxen or 2 horses, something equal to pull this, right, this plow along, because it's a lot of work. It's hard. He puts like a donkey on one side. Which donkeys are, they could beat me up, but they're not big, and like an oxen on the other. So it's like this thing's just going in circles because the oxen's pulling way harder, and the donkey's like, what's happening here? Why am I here? And then, to make it even more crazy, he's like taking salt instead of seeds and putting that in there. And if you put salt in the ground, nothing's going to grow. He's like, look how crazy I am. I'm ruining this farm. And like they're watching this. And there's this dude, Agamemnon, not the stupidest guy in the world. He's like, I think this guy's faking. I think he's acting a little too crazy. And he sends this dude Palamedes Palamedes grows and grabs baby Telemachus. He's just a baby at this point, from Penelope, Odysseus' wife, and puts the baby in front of Odysseus' like crazy swirling thing. And Odysseus sees his son. He's like, oh my gosh. And he runs over and grabs him. And he's like really mad. But like, yeah, you're so crazy that you didn't know what you were doing. But as soon as you saw your son was in danger, you weren't crazy. He's like, all right, you got me. So he goes with them. But he's really mad at Palamedes. He's pretty mad at Agamemnon too, I think. But he really reserves his judgment for Palamedes. That'll come back later. So he gets into the Trojan War, and Odysseus is a major character in the Iliad too. He's not up there on the level of Diomedes or Achilles, and he's especially not held up to the same levels of adulation as they are. There's always a little bit of a hint. I don't believe that the Homer who wrote the Iliad is the same Homer who wrote the Odyssey. There's certain attitudes that have shifted. It might be that maybe it was written down a few years later, which, I mean, obviously the Iliad takes place first, but the attitude towards Odysseus shifts significantly. He's a little bit more of a scoundrel in the Iliad and a little bit disreputable, and there's just kind of like little slights at him, like, yeah, you're not quite as good. Whereas in the Odyssey, it's just like they beat your head, like he's like a god, he's wily, he's smart, So I guess no, I should finish up the Trojan War. I'm like, should I just go now? Okay, so he has many adventures in the Trojan War. We see him in the Iliad when it starts off. He's one of the, like, along with Nestor, he's one of the most wise counselors to Agamemnon. He's always asking him for advice. And he actually functions kind of as a voice of reason. He tries to talk to Achilles, like, hey, Achilles, stop sulking. We need you to fight. And it doesn't really work. Later on, when Achilles is super mad, he's like, we have to kill all the Trojans. Like, dude, let's, like, let our guys relax. Like, he's a much more reasonable figure. But there's also, like, a side that shows that he's kind of, like, sneaky. There's a part where he and Diomedes go on this nighttime raid to kill some Trojans, and like it's actually pretty interesting. Like they sneak into the tent and describes him cutting people, and the string goes out of them because they go nuts. Like it's gross, but I mean these books are very gross. But like he does these kind of sneaky checks. You don't see much head-on fights with him and things in the Iliad, and the Iliad is all very much about that celebration of like the wrath, like the raw power of Achilles. So already Odysseus is a little bit different there. When Achilles eventually dies, when he's shot by the arrow of Paris, there is a competition among the Greeks because he has that amazing armor that was made for him by Hephaestus. They're like, who's going to get the armor? And it basically comes down to, it's going to be either Ajax, who's like this hulking, I mean, he's probably too big to wear the armor. I don't know why he wants it so bad. This hulking warrior. He's easily the strongest physically of the Greeks. And Odysseus. So he does have some estimation there, right? And kind of like a silent vote or something happens, like there's an agreement behind the scenes, or like the writing is on the wall that Odysseus is going to win. And there's like this madness that comes upon like Ajax, and he thinks he's murdering the Greeks out of revenge, which is like, wow, you really didn't deserve that armor if you're going to kill people over it. And when he comes to, he sees that the madness made him just kill a bunch of sheep, and he's so ashamed he kills himself. So Odysseus gets the armor, and it's probably good he does this because he would have lost it almost certainly later. He actually gives the armor to Achilles' son, Neoptolemus. I've never said that word aloud, or I did the other day the first time. It's hard. But that's kind of like nice, right? It's like, wow, you got like literally armor given to you. It was created by like the best god at creating armor, and you gave it away to the guy who had it. It was his son. Like, that's surprisingly decent, Odysseus. He's like, yeah, I gotta do stuff sometimes to keep you guys off balance. The most famous act of his throughout the Trojan War, he's the dude who created the Trojan Horse. Like, that was his whole idea. Which, we're so used to the idea of the Trojan Horse, the idea behind that is so brilliant. If you think about, you live in a world where nobody ever thought of doing something like that, it's an amazing idea. Like, we're gonna make them like this statue. Nobody would think we'll put people in it, but they did. And the Trojans took it inside their fortress, and the Greek heroes came out and murdered Troy and sacked it. And before that, he stole the Palladium, which is the statue of Athena with Diomedes. I talked about that in Diomedes' episode. So, the war is finally over. 10 years this war went. Water sip. Odysseus and his men leave. And this is the story of the Odyssey. Now, I'm going to have to truncate this because I've already gone pretty long. And the Odyssey, really, everyone should read the Odyssey. And if you're a bit in the young side, because the Odyssey is a daunting work, I recommend maybe picking up my friend Gareth Hines' version of the Odyssey. He did a full graphic novel version. It's pretty great. Like, he really gets all the details in there. So you should definitely read an original translation at some point, or if you read ancient Greek, even better. But, like, maybe check out the Greek, like, the version Gareth Hines did, because, like, he's a crazy man for doing it. It's so much detail in this. But the Odyssey starts off, so it's like 10 years later, after the war has ended. And we check in with the son of Odysseus, Telemachus. And Odysseus has never gotten home. And, like, normally this, I mean, it probably took a while back then, probably took a few months. But, like, 10 years later, they're like, something's up. And we see Athena, who we're going to see a lot of Athena in this. And she's actually talking to her dad, and she reveals in conversation that for the last, like, 7 years, Odysseus has been a prisoner on the island of this nymph or goddess, we'll get to her, Calypso. And she's like, can't we let him off? And he's like, nah, man, Poseidon's super mad still. And so she goes and she sees that his son is out looking for him, finding answers. And a lot has transpired in those 20 years. So remember, he was a baby when he left. Now he's about 21 years old. There was 10 years while his dad was away fighting the war, and another 10 years where he hasn't gotten home yet. And most people are like, he's dead. And Telemachus in his heart's like, he's not dead. And his mom, Penelope, who's like this very famous figure for being so faithful and being so true, she's also like, he's not dead. But there's this army of suitors, people who want to marry her. She's the queen of Ithaca. You marry her, you become the king of Ithaca, who have taken up residence in their house. Like, they're living off of Odysseus's palace and his lands. They're just being kind of pigs. They're like, hey, come on, we want to, like, get married to you. And, like, they won't go home, and they're being kind of threatening, and they start fights with Telemachus. And there's even a plot we learn later to straight up murder Telemachus by a bunch of them. And so Telemachus is like, this can't stand. So, like, Athena comes to him in disguise. She takes on the form of his mentor, named Mentor. And they kind of go on this weird little trip. And at this point, Odysseus hasn't appeared in the Odyssey yet. So I guess in a sense, Telemachus is almost like Diomedes, where he's taken the first part of the Iliad. So they go around, they visit all of Pop's old friends who are still around, right? They go to, what's the order? I think first they go to see Nestor, and there's been knowledge given at this point. He's aware through Mentor, Athena, that his dad is being held in this island. And so they go and see Nestor, and Nestor fills him in on some of the stuff that happened to other people. Like specifically, we learn how Agamemnon had a very unhappy end upon returning. We go see Menelaus, and Menelaus is in Sparta again with his queen, Helen. He's taken her, and there's maybe someone else they visit. But they're kind of going around. We're hearing about... We get filled in, because remember, the Iliad is only a couple weeks of the Trojan War. We don't really hear how it ends, but in this bit... Because this is such a great story, they kind of fill us in. It's like almost an info dump where you hear about what happened to Odysseus and how the war ended and all his old friends and stuff. It's really interesting, and it's like the first few books of the Odyssey. The Odyssey. Then we cut to, man, I know I'm forgetting something. Well, I think the next chapter, maybe like Athena once again goes back after showing Telemachus around and kind of warning him. She goes and she talks to her dad again, Zeus, and this time the Olympians that are present, Poseidon's not there. He's at a wedding in Ethiopia, so he misses it. And she's like, can we get him off that island? And Zeus is like, yeah, let's do it. So, and like at this point we're like, wait, why is he stuck on this island? What's happening here? And he sends his son Hermes. It's one of my favorite descriptions in all of Greek writing too. Like, we then see Odysseus. He's on this island. He's actually crying because he misses being home so much, just sitting on the beach. He doesn't have it too bad there. We'll talk about that. But, he still wants to get home. And he sees in the distance, like, these splashes of water. And they're kind of zagging to him. It's Hermes running on the water. And every time he puts his foot down, his wings, like, hit the water and it splashes up. I'm like, what a cool image. Somebody thought of that. Like, what a great idea. And he's moving so fast, you can't really see him from a distance. You just see the splashes of water. And Hermes comes, and Hermes goes to Calypso. Now, Calypso is, she, in this story at least, Hesiod says that she is one of the Oceanides. But Homer, or whoever this Homer is, says that she is a daughter of Atlas. So she's one of the Pleiades, which makes her one of Hermes' aunts. His mom, Maya, is the leader of the Pleiades. And he's like, you got to let this guy loose. And Calypso's like, okay. And he's been there for 7 years. They've been in a relationship, but he still wants to go home. But he's kind of like, it's not a very good relationship because she is a goddess. She's way more powerful than Odysseus. She's keeping him there. And Hermes makes her let him go. She gives him like a raft. He goes off. Poseidon returns, is super mad, wrecks the raft. That's actually that scene in my book. Do I have it? Have you ever seen the scene of like, bro, of God Poseidon, like wrecking the ship of Poseidon in the book Poseidon? That's that scene. He wrecks it. Odysseus is just clung to a piece of wreckage, and he lands on the shores of Phaeacia. Now, I know this is confusing, but what's so cool about the Odyssey, and why the Odyssey is like one of the most widely read books like ever, is like it starts off in the middle of the action. And like we pick up like near the end of his thing, and then while he is a guest of these people, of Princess Nausicaa on the Phaeacians, he tells some of the stories of what happened, about how they left. And that's where we hear we're not there with him when it first happens. A lot of the most famous stories of the Odyssey are Odysseus telling it to the queen, the princess and the court of Phaeacia. That's where we hear about Polyphemus. That's where we hear about Circe. That's where we hear about the sirens. Like all this big stuff that happens, all his crazy adventures. I just realized I've been talking a long time. I'm going to draw me and some Odysseus. So we talked about this briefly. Somebody asked why I draw him with this cap. The cap was a Greek sailor's cap. And for most of the Odyssey, Odysseus is a Greek sailor. He is a king, to be sure. He's very wily. He has a lot of great adventures. As we're often reminded, like I said, he's like a god. But I did want to give him that little hint to his nautical roots. And the Odyssey is such a key work that like we use the term Odyssey all the time today to describe like a trip that was really like crazy in some way. Like, man, I went to the grocery store and like the line was so long and they were out of eggs. It was such an Odyssey. That's a terrible use of Odyssey, but this is the sort of thing we say all the time. So I'm drawing kind of super majestic and regal bearing Odysseus. I should mention throughout all this, he is accompanied to varying degrees. Sometimes Hermes directly intervenes, sometimes Athena does. Athena is kind of his, especially towards the latter end of this trip, she's with him every step of the way. And there's often these bits where she gives him like these kind of like Olympian punch-ups, where like you'll say like she restores some of his youth. Because at this point, dude's been gone for 20 years. You figure he was at least 20 when he left. He's in his 40s. He's like my age at least, right? Like older than dirt. But like she restores him and like gives him his grandeur. She cleans him up because he's been having a rough time. He's been at sea for like years and he's been stuck in this island for years. Give him kind of big arms here because this is like a more mature him, I guess. So there we have an Odysseus. It's not the most unique form I've ever designed. He goes through a lot of costume changes. He actually takes a lot of disguises in the course of the story too. So it's kind of hard to nail a definitive thing for him. I just I landed on the face with I wanted to give him the beard, kind of sharpish features just to emphasize a little bit of that craftiness, that wiliness, and giving him the sailor's cap. Aside from that, and then also he's got to be notably bigger and stronger than most of the people around him, but not the gods. So where was I? So I should mention really quickly, he encounters Polyphemus, who is a Cyclops, the son of Poseidon. He and his men kind of screw up. They get stuck in a stupid situation. I'm not getting into it too much. They're caught in his cave. He starts eating them, and Odysseus tricks him, the very famous no man bit. He tells him his name is No Man, and then while they get him drunk on wine and they blind him, they stab his eye out. So he's trapped in the cave, and he's yelling, "No man has killed me! No man has blinded me!" And the other Cyclopes are like, "Cool, that's awesome. I'm glad nobody's killed you." And he finally escapes, and he has his moment of hubris. And we know this. There's always, with the Greek hero, there's always this moment where they do something really stupid. And he as he's escaping, he's on his boat with his men. They're pulling away, and there's this giant monster who's like just got a smoking hole where his eye used to be, roaring on the shore. And he yells to him, "By the way, my real name's Odysseus," because he wanted credit for it, because he couldn't let the fact that he was so clever and got away with it. He couldn't let it slide. So Polyphemus prays to his dad. Come on, this guy poked my eye out, Dad. I mean, I was eating him, but come on, it still stinks. And it's funny because Polyphemus is kind of like, maybe you could clear my eye up, fix it. You are a god, but if not, just, punish him. And Poseidon, being Poseidon's like, yeah, I'm not going to leave your eye. You dealt that yourself. But he does make sure that he gets stuck on that island forever, and delays his trip home. So he's like, you won't get home until all of your men have died, and it'll be a very hard trip and all this jazz. And this is kind of the Odyssey. So, all right, well, I talked about like the sirens. Circe is a sorceress who turns his men into pigs. It's a very famous chapter of it. Again, Hermes has to involve himself again. Hermes is like, what, every time you land on an island with a lady with magic powers, you get stuck here? So he gets Circe to release him, and Circe gives him some advice. She's like, I don't think you're going to be able to get home until you deal with this problem that you're clearly having where the universe is out to get you. You need to go speak to the land of the dead. He's like, sure, let me do that. I left out the Lotus Eaters. There's so many steps. There's no way I could do like 10 episodes on the Odyssey. They go to the land of the dead. And he makes sacrifices. He travels to it's like the journey to the underworld, right? And he sees like a lot of the people that we talked about, like his old friends. He actually sees the mortal half of Heracles. That's where that part comes from. That whole bit in the opening of my book, Hades, where he sees various figures, where he sees like Medusa, he sees that too. And he's making these blood sacrifices to various people so they'll talk to them. His whole goal there is to speak to Odysseus. Odysseus was a blind seer who had died at this point, who could see the future and was very wise. And Circe's like, you need to talk to Tiresias. I think Circe needed to. I think Circe's wanted to make him have to do these extra steps. Weirdly, we see Achilles. Like, wow, like of all the heroes, you didn't get into like the Elysian fields. And like Achilles has this really weird line about, it's kind of like a line, I'd rather be dead in here than up on the world above and serving the gods. Like Achilles is bitter. And he sees Agamemnon and stuff. But Tiresias sees him, and Tiresias is kind of like, he pours some blood, Tiresias like eats it, it's disgusting. And he's like, Poseidon's really mad at you, I wonder why. And Odysseus is like, I think I know why. And then he's like, I'm going to give you a warning. There's a way you could stop this. The Poseidon thing, he's just going to be mad at you forever. But you're going to eventually land on an island of Helios's cows. Don't eat the cows. If you guys don't eat the cows, you're okay. Don't eat the cows. So they get past Scylla and Charybdis, which is like this crazy, whirlpool monster and monster with all these heads. It's this very famous part. There's the sirens who like have the songs that are super beautiful. And Odysseus, which is actually kind of cool. He's like, I want to hear what this music is. It's so beautiful. It makes people throw them into the water. So he has his men chain him to the mast, and they all put wax in their ears so they can't hear it. So he can hear it. And he's like, no matter what I say, don't let me go. He's like, let me go. I want to go swim with the sirens. They're like, nah, you're nuts. But he got to hear the sirens music because he's wily and he gets to experience these things. They land on the island of Helios, and they get stuck there for a while. The weather's not good, and his men are like, oh, let's go and eat those cows. And he's like, dude, I said one thing, don't eat the cows. And he keeps telling them not to eat the cows. Then one day he like falls asleep, and they eat the cows. So they finally push off from the island, and Helios is like, they ate my cows. And Zeus is like, yep. And he throws a lightning bolt. Boom! Blows it up. Kills every single man who's left. At this point, there's a lot less because there's been this thing of attrition. Except for, I almost said Orpheus. Odysseus, and that's how he gets to Phaeacia, where we see. No, that's where he gets to Calypso's island. And it's like this like kind of like crazy story where we fill in backwards. We're like, wow, that was crazy. And he's been telling the story the whole time. Then, from Phaeacia, you like figure it's really hard. No, he actually gets home pretty easy. But he arrives to that kind of rough area I described, where his kingdom has been taken over by these suitors. And they have guards everywhere and stuff, and they would kill him as soon as he showed up, because then they lose their whole chance. And they also know we've been acting like real pigs here. And I bet you if he comes back, he's going to do something awful to us. Spoilers, he does. So he arrives in disguise. He actually becomes, remember I said there's a lot of pig farmers there? He disguises himself as a beggar and lives among the pig farmers. And eventually, I'm going to have to cut this short because I'm going way too long. He eventually gets Telemachus and he kind of reveals himself to Telemachus, again with the help of Athena, who's there kind of like, boop, good looks on, boop, good looks off. And like Telemachus is like, oh my God, it's my father. And they make this whole plot. And this whole plot is basically, he shows up as this beggar to Penelope's castle, where she's been keeping these suitors, these pigs at bay forever. And they, of course, start picking on this guy because they're like, oh, look at you, you're homeless, you're a jerk, because they're bad people. And there's a challenge proposed. Odysseus has a bow. Let's draw his bow in. And remember how I said they mentioned that Odysseus is like a god? He's like literally bigger than everybody and stronger than everybody else. This bow is so big and so mighty that no normal person could even string it. And the challenge is to string the bow. And to string a bow, like it's kind of straight normally, right? I should probably draw the stringer in here. And then you have to take this bow, this huge bow, and bend it and hold the string down and put it on the other side. That's going to be like so hard. Like the pull string on that thing is like hundreds of pounds. It's incredibly heavy. And then shoot an arrow with that bow through 12 axes. Sounds almost impossible. And that's the idea. The only person who could do that would be a god or Odysseus, who's like unto a god. And so that's his big reveal. The suitors will try, like, I can't do it. It hurts my hands and stuff. And then this like kind of hobo looking guy comes up and he takes it. And like it's a really great description. Like this describing like how his strength is showing through, and he bends it effortlessly, pulls back the arrow right through the 12 bows. And all the suitors are like, oh no. And some of them go to attack him. A lot more go to run. But Telemachus has locked the doors. And they kill all of them. And it's brutal. It's great. Like the stuff that the Odyssey is most famous for only happens in like maybe 3 or 4 books. Like all the really crazy mythological weird monster stuff. But this slaughter takes place a long time, where it's just Odysseus with his bow, like in this courtyard, just killing everybody. And then kind of uncoolly, I mean, he then kills the servants too. It's like they're literally being told to serve these people. You shouldn't have done that, but he does that. Everyone agrees nowadays. It stinks. And after all this, like, it's just this horrible massacre. Like, so much so that people are, like, clearly disturbed. Like, that was maybe a little bit much. He's like, I don't care, I'm crazy. And Penelope's still not sure. His faithful wife, who's waited for him all these years, she's like, I'm not sure 100%. If you are truly my husband, you could bring our bed here. Because it's a big, heavy bed. You won't be able to move it. And he's like, I could never move our bed because our bed is literally planted in the ground. It's made of a living tree. And she's like, only my husband would know that. You are really my husband. And they're all happy. And I went very long on this one. I am sorry. So let me wrap this up super quickly. He then becomes the king. There's different versions of he resumes his kingship. He's back with his son, who grew up without him. He's with his wife, who they both have had their beauty and their youth restored, so they still have plenty of years together. Tiresias in the land of the dead actually predicts that he will die of old age. And that's a nice story, but there was an epic, a lost epic. We have little bits of it called the Telegony. And that's about, so when he was on the island with Circe, he was with Circe, and she had a son, Telegonus, by Odysseus. And in this story, we don't have all of it. We have little bits and pieces, right? Basically, Odysseus is made aware that there's a prophecy his son will kill him. So he actually sends like his son Telemachus away, and he thinks he's safe. And he lives on this island all by himself, like afraid of being killed by his son. And Telegonus knows nothing about this. He leaves the island of Circe wanting to find his true dad. And he goes there and he finds the island. And there's this confusion. People are like, what are you doing? You can't see the king. And he's like, I just want to see him. He's not really getting across. If somebody shows up saying, he's my dad, people aren't even listening to you. And Odysseus himself runs out holding a spear. He's like thinking, he's worried, like, oh my God, it's finally happened. Telemachus is going to kill me. And there's a scuffle. And Telegonus actually accidentally stabs Odysseus and he dies. But that one's kind of lost, like I said, to time. I kind of like to think, personally, he does some terrible things, but I actually kind of really like Odysseus. So I like the idea that maybe he's one of those very few Greek heroes who actually gets to die peacefully at home. He certainly suffers a lot in the middle of his life, so maybe just give him a nice end for the end. And whew, I feel like that got a little rushed. Sorry, it was hard to do it. That is Odysseus in a nutshell. We might have to return to doing, I don't know, like do some spotlights. I would love to do maybe like another examination of Odysseus where I get to go into some more of the individual things rather than just listing them off, because he's a fascinating character. I think by modern standards, people much more relate to the heroism of Odysseus than they do of Achilles. Achilles is wrathful and kind of selfish. And he does some terrible things too, for sure. But because I think in the modern day, we really value the characters who are kind of crafty and creative like that. And I think that makes him a much more, he's certainly much more popular now. It's debatable whether or not that was the case back then. Like I said, the Romans were kind of like, they kind of poo-pooed on him. They were like, he's a little, sneaky. And there's all these kind of like snide remarks, like little offhand comments about him in the Iliad. I'm going to close for anybody who's like a fan of the Odyssey and has read it a zillion times like I have. This is a book called The Lost Books of the Odyssey. It's by Zachary Mason. It's not really lost books. It's the idea that like there are different versions of the story out there that we will never know, and that's totally true. This was a story that was hundreds of years old before it was ever written down. There were so many different iterations. It's kind of like different reflections, different parts, different ways the stories could have gone. And it is awesome. It's a bunch of short stories. It has the best effect if you know the Odyssey really well because it plays off with different little ideas. Almost every aspect of something I mentioned here today has a weird alternate version in the story. And also read Madeline Miller's book Circe, which has been winning like all the awards. Like you don't need me to push it for you. That's a great book about Circe, who is I guess we could call her a goddess. They often call her a sorceress who turns his men into pigs, and her kind of like her inner life. And Odysseus is a character in that, as is Hermes, as is many other characters. So let's take some questions here. I'm going with the happily ever after ending. I agree, Anika. Toronto Amanda asks, is there a story when Odysseus does kill himself by going to the stories? The Sirens. Not an official one. That honestly might be, that's the sort of thing you would expect to see in the Lost Books of the Odyssey, a version where like the sirens take him. The siren part is like, it's super famous. You will see so many vase paintings of this and people mention all the time. It's a tiny snippet of the book. It's like a page. It's so quick. So it's even though it's like in our collective unconsciousness of it, like our awareness of the story beyond the confines of the page, it's one of the most famous chapters, but it's such a minor chapter of the actual story that it would be surprising if there was an alternate like vein of mythology where that's where he met his end. Let's see what else we got. Do you think any other Greek hero could do the Odysseus challenge? That's a good question, Sparksfly, and yeah, I do, honestly. So he is mentioned as being super strong and great and stuff, but he's also, keep in mind, this is kind of after the age of heroes. Zeus engineered the creation of the Trojan War to kind of thin out the ranks of like the supercharged demigod type heroes. And he's very successful in that. Nearly everyone in that generation is dead. That being said, Diomedes is still around, by at least most accounts. He could have done that, I'm sure. And if we go back a few generations, I'd say virtually any of the demigods could probably have done that. He's a little bit more than mortal in that he's got great-great-grandpa as Hermes. But like Heracles could have probably done it with like one finger. But at this point, we're already past that age of heroes. And in the Greek world, the idea that like people who are half god, half human, that's already becoming a thing of the past. So there's certainly a lot less characters who are able to do it. It's almost like Star Wars, like, you know, in the original trilogy, there's like Yoda and Luke and Obi-Wan Kenobi, and we've revealed later a few other people around there. Like, there's other people who could do it, but like there's so few and far between. But yeah, that's a great question. Do you have a design for Telemachus? If you do, can you draw him? Yeah, I don't think my Telemachus ever actually appeared in this. I did do design work for him because there was plans. I've wanted to tell other versions, like other parts of the stories of the Odyssey in other books, and they always get bumped. So I've designed a Telemachus, and he looks a lot like his dad. He's a bit ganglier because I figure he's still a young guy. Although I guess by ancient Greek standards, 21 was pretty much a full-grown man. But honestly, the way his story is conducted, he's very much acting... he's very close to his mother, and he's in a very subordinate role. So he's not been able to become his own man yet. So I kind of drew him a little bit more like the way you might expect a 21-year-old today to be, rather than ancient Greece. He has a similar build to his dad, quite a bit leaner, and his face is actually kind of like what his face would look like if he had shaved. But I always felt strongly he would have big, weird mushroom hair. Like it would be kind of cut short on the sides and poofy. I don't know why. That was just something from when I first read it. Telemachus is a pretty cool character, and we could probably even maybe do an episode of Telemachus. It'd have to pad it out, but I could do more. I could go more into like the different like the bits of the massacre and stuff, because Telemachus has some adventures beyond this, and he kind of is. He actually reminds me a bit. A lot of the times when we do these Greek hero deep dives, it's kind of disappointing because there's always like the real, cruddy things that the heroes do. He's one of those. He seems like he's a pretty good guy. He's like, Telemachus, you're not a creep. You're not like no Achilles or Theseus, king creeps. That was awesome. I don't know if that was reference to my drawing or me talking that much, but thank you. Let's see what else we got here. We have the Medusa spine collection of your books, but is there an Athena spine version? So what Alicia's asking here is in references about, so if you grab my books, if you have them in paperback, I have a stack of them here. You put them, well, I'm not going to put them in right order. Anyway, you put them together. I'll show you a few. There's these slivers of an image, and it creates, you can almost see some there, the face of Medusa, if you have all 12 books. However, if you buy the hardcovers of my books, same books, just a little bit thicker in hardcover, the image is not Medusa, it's actually Athena. And there's a reason for this that is kind of funny. I had come up with the idea of doing it on the spines. I worked in a bookstore for years and knew how important it was to have something interesting on the spine of a book to make it stand out, because most times in a bookstore or a library, the books are spined out. They're very rarely faced out. I knew my books are going to be thin, so I'm like, how about it's a whole bunch of images that combine together to make one. My editor's like, perfect, that's great. Everyone's really excited about it. Then, when the books started coming out, we started selling hardcovers. First, we only made a few for libraries and stuff to buy, but people were buying them a lot. So we started doing full-on print runs in hardcover. So whenever when my books come out, they come out at the same time in hardcover and paperback. It's a little weird. Most books don't come out like this. And you can choose to buy them either way. The problem is hardcovers are a bit thicker. And because we hadn't planned this, nobody thought about it. It literally wasn't until the third book came out. I got my early copies. I get out a copy of Hera. And I take it out. I'm like, my first copy. And I put it up on the shelf next to my copies of Athena and Zeus to see it. And I realize it's thicker. We're going through the picture of Medusa too fast because it was using bigger chunks. I call up my editor immediately. I'm like, we have a problem. He's like, this is a problem. So we do some discussions. I'm like, I have a solution. The first image on the first 3 books will be the same, but I'm going to change it. It's going to be Medusa on the soft covers because we already have that piece of artwork all cut up and ready to go. I'm going to use that first bit of the drawing and then make it a drawing of Athena with her aegis on the hardcovers. Like, cool. So that's the thing. If you buy it in hardcover, you get an Athena and her aegis. You buy it in paperback, you get Medusa. If you buy it mix and match, you're going to have a weird collection of like, all of a sudden, like, Athena's kind of green there and for a little bit. So, yeah, it's a little weird. It doesn't pay to make Poseidon mad. No, it doesn't pay to even have Poseidon mention you. I would, like just try to live your life without having Poseidon ever see you. CVQ Lum, I'm sorry, asked, do I need to resend art I last week through Instagram Messenger? It's tricky. I said this before, CVQ Lum, I'm sorry. Like, people who don't send it to my email address, basically I take everything on my email address and assemble from there as preparation for this. And I'm not often on Instagram leading up to this, but I will really try. For those of you who don't know, CVQ is doing a whole comic about Metis that is really fun. And she's shown me a couple of pages. And for whatever reason, she's not able to send it to my email, so she has sent it to me a messenger on Instagram. But I'm sorry. When I'm doing prep for these things, I don't always get a chance to do it. I'll really try to get it to show it to Friday. I'm sorry. Let's see. Why is Apollo barefoot in your book Ares? Quite cool, though. And did you consider giving him a silver bow and Artemis golden arrows? Don't think I noticed he was barefoot. What we've discovered, sometimes I have made... So the original plan was OG gods are barefoot, except for Hera, because she is specifically mentioned as having shoes. And then second generation gods are wearing shoes. But I guess I drew Apollo barefoot. I guess he just felt like being barefoot that day. I don't have a good reason. That's just me screwing up the art, I think. And did I consider giving him a silver bow and Artemis golden arrows? So in some versions of Apollo's myth, he does have a silver bow as opposed to a gold bow. I leaned into the gold bow idea because it was a nice juxtaposition with his sister who had the silver bow. But I guess you could switch it around. I'm not aware of any version where she has golden arrows there, because she normally is described as having silvery shafts that look like moonlight. And like his shafts are more like golden because they bring flame and like heat and stuff. But I could be wrong about that. Could you show us some more things from the Dionysus book? That's a great question, CVQ Llama. I actually have a whole bunch of finished pages drawn. I should actually show that sometime. Just a few things that don't spoil anything. Maybe I'll do a special episode where I just do a little bit about that. Greek mythology mentions Apollo has shoes. I think it was specifically Apollo doesn't have shoes in Ares. Let's just see. Because he normally does have shoes. He normally has little golden sandals. And sure enough, yep, I just opened up to the page. He does not have shoes. I have an answer for it. See the way he comes down in like a cloud to protect Aeneas? He leaves his shoes behind. He's in such a hurry. He's so angry that Diomedes dared turn on Aphrodite and stabbed her and drew her ichor, that he's like, oh my gosh, and he jumps out. It's like when you like run and like you don't remember like put on your pants or something. Like he leaves his shoes behind. Does that work? Does anybody buy it? I don't know. He doesn't have shoes in Olympus later either, so it's not great. Show us the cover. I cannot show you the cover yet, CVQ Llama, because my publisher likes to save the cover for big reveals. Like Hephaestus was revealed in like Entertainment Weekly. It'll be something like that. So I can't show you that. I could show you some of the interior pages, though. What I'll probably do is show you on the screen. I have the big pieces of art inside, but I don't have the panels and stuff drawn on those yet. They don't look right. They look weird until I do that. I'll think about it. I'll definitely do like a... Because I haven't actually done a Dionysus episode yet. He's literally the most major god we haven't touched yet. I should do an episode on Dionysus, and then I'll have to show you just some Dionysus artwork. I mean, I'd have to, right? You got to see that. Maybe the Greeks didn't think being a hero was such a great thing. You know, it is interesting, Ranka, you mentioned this. So when we use the term hero, the Greeks did have it. Like for Greeks, the term hero is almost like demigod. We've taken the term hero to mean somebody who's heroic. Like I was joking around saying, not even joking around, I was saying Diomedes is like Steve Rogers, like Captain America. He's like a hero. He's heroic. But hero was more like you did great deeds. You didn't have to be what we would consider heroic in today's thing. And sometimes you were awful. A lot of times you were awful. Most of these heroes, most ancient Greek heroes, do some pretty monstrous stuff, just like their gods do. I don't think they like to put the people even though weirdly they worship their heroes in some instances. They didn't put them on a pedestal where they thought they were like perfect. They were like, no, we get it. Achilles did bad things. Achilles brought his own downfall about because he did the wrong things, but we still like him a lot. Dionysus would say, okay, boomer. Does the Dionysus book have part of Medusa on spine? Yes, it will, if it's the paperback. The hardcover will have a part of Athena. So I think we're just about done here. Yeah. Is there any more questions that are like quick ones I can ask her? Oh, no, it got stuck. No, I think that's it. So thank you, everybody, for tuning in. This was a real marathon one. Boy, trying to distill the Odyssey of all things down into just 25 minutes of me talking with Jen drawing pictures. Oh, look, it's a little Telemachus. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in. We're going to wrap this whole thing up on Friday, Hero Week. The first Epic Hero Week will be wrapped up, where we're going to shift gears from the Greek side of things, although we will be covering part of the Iliad again. We're going to be talking about Aeneas, the son of Aphrodite, and the legendary, he's a Trojan prince. one of the legendary founders of Rome, in a sense. I'll get back to you guys on that. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I'll see you all on Friday. Bye-bye.